Kim Williams did not run away from society. She simply stepped aside. In a country built on consumption, credit, and constant growth, Kim chose a different path, not out of rebellion, but out of clarity. She lives in Montana. Her annual expenses are about $5,000. No rent, no debt, no credit cards, no paycheck in the traditional sense. And she says she has never felt richer. Kim grew up like most Americans. She was taught that success meant earning more, owning more, upgrading constantly. She followed the rules for a while, went to school, worked regular jobs, paid bills, chased stability, but something never felt right. She noticed how much time people spent working jobs they hated to buy things they barely used. She noticed the quiet anxiety that came with debt, the exhaustion, the feeling of being trapped in a system that demanded more and more, but never delivered peace. For Kim, the breaking point wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden collapse or crisis. It was a slow realization. She began asking simple questions. How much do I actually need to live? How much of my life am I trading for money? And what would happen if I stopped chasing more? She started small. She stopped buying things she didn't truly need. She learned how to repair instead of replace. She reduced her expenses month by month, noticing that nothing bad happened when she consumed less. In fact, she felt lighter. Eventually, Kim made a radical decision. She opted out of the conventional economy as much as possible. She moved to a simple living arrangement in Montana, surrounded by land and quiet. She minimized her possessions to what was functional and meaningful. Everything she owned had a purpose. She stopped using credit entirely. Debt, she realized, wasn't just financial. It was psychological. It shaped decisions, limited freedom, and silently controlled time. Kim didn't want to owe her future to banks or bills. So she designed a life that cost almost nothing. Food came first. Kim began rescuing food that grocery stores discarded, perfectly edible items thrown away due to cosmetic flaws or expiration labels. She learned which stores discarded food on which days. She approached it not as desperation, but as awareness. America throws away millions of tons of food every year. Kim simply redirected it. She also bartered. She exchanged skills and labor for food. She gardened. She preserved. She cooked simply. Her meals were not extravagant, but they were nourishing. She didn't eat for status. She ate for health. Housing was next. Instead of renting or buying property with debt, Kim lived in modest structures, spaces that were small, warm, and functional. She didn't need extra rooms to store unused objects. She didn't need square footage to impress anyone. Her home served her life, not the other way around. Transportation followed the same logic. Kim walked. She biked. She used shared resources when necessary. She didn't own a car for status or convenience. Time became her currency. With fewer expenses, she needed less money. With less money she needed less work. With less work, she had more time. Time to think, time to connect, time to live intentionally. Many people assume a life like this must feel restrictive. Kim describes it as the opposite. Freedom, she says, isn't about having choices in a store. It's about not needing those choices at all. Her life didn't shrink. It expanded. She had time to read, to learn, to help neighbors, to grow food, to be present. She became deeply connected to her community. Bartering created relationships. Mutual aid replaced transactions. People began to notice. At first, they were confused, then curious, then inspired. Kim wasn't preaching. She wasn't selling a system. She was simply living visibly different. And that was enough. As Kim settled deeper into her way of living, something unexpected happened. The quieter her life became, the clearer everything else felt. At first, she had assumed minimalism would be mostly about money, about numbers, budgets, and cutting costs. But over time, she realized money was only the surface. What truly changed was how she related to fear. Most people live with a constant low-level anxiety, bills, deadlines, expectations, the sense that if they stop running, everything will collapse. Kim noticed that once her expenses dropped close to zero, that fear lost its grip. She no longer woke up thinking about what she owed. She no longer measured her days by productivity metrics. Her worth was no longer tied to output. Instead, she began measuring life in something else entirely. Attention. She noticed small things she had never had time for before. The way light moved across the land in the morning, the rhythm of seasons, the difference between needing something and wanting it. Her days slowed, but they didn't empty. They filled. Kim spent time learning skills that modern life had quietly outsourced. Repairing clothes, preserving food, fixing what broke instead of replacing it. None of these skills were dramatic, but each one added a layer of confidence. She didn't feel helpless anymore. When something went wrong, she didn't immediately reach for money as a solution. She reached for creativity. Bartering became central to her life. She traded labor for food, skills for supplies, time for a connection. These exchanges weren't transactional in the cold sense. They built relationships. Trust replaced contracts. She became known in her community, not for what she owned, but for what she contributed. And that changed how people treated her. Instead of seeing her as poor, they saw her as capable, grounded, reliable. Kim noticed something else too. When money stopped dominating her decisions, she became far more selective about how she used it. Every dollar mattered, not because it was scarce, but because it represented time and effort. Her annual expenses stayed around $5,000, but they weren't fixed by force. They were low because her needs were genuinely low. Food came mostly from rescued sources, gardens, and exchanges. Clothing was second-hand or repaired. Entertainment was conversation, books, nature, creativity. She didn't feel deprived. She felt insulated from a system that constantly told people they were lacking. Of course, not everyone understood her choices. Some people assumed she must be unhappy. Others assumed she was secretly struggling. A few believed she was irresponsible. Kim learned not to argue. She understood that her life challenged deeply held beliefs. Beliefs about success, safety, and identity. When someone questioned her lifestyle aggressively, it was rarely about her. It was about the discomfort her choices created in them. So she stayed calm, honest, open. She shared details when asked. She never tried to convert anyone. Her life spoke louder than explanations. Over time, messages began to arrive. Emails, letters, comments from people across the country. Some were curious, some were desperate. Many were simply tired. They weren't asking how to live on $5,000 a year. They were asking how to breathe again. Kim answered carefully. She didn't believe radical minimalism was the answer for everyone, but she believed everyone could benefit from questioning default choices. Why do we accept debt as normal? Why do we equate busyness with value? Why do we fear simplicity? She encouraged people to start where they were, to remove one unnecessary expense, to repair one thing instead of replacing it, to notice how it felt. Most people discovered something surprising. Less didn't feel like loss. It felt like relief. Kim's story gained attention online, not because it was flashy, but because it was calm in a loud world. In a culture driven by upgrades, she embodied enough. She didn't frame her life as sacrifice. She framed it as alignment. Her days were consistent, predictable, peaceful, but never boring. Each day brought small challenges that kept her engaged. Each season required adjustment. Winter meant preparation. Summer meant abundance. She lived with the land instead of fighting it. Her health improved. Stress faded. Sleep deepened. She often said that happiness wasn't something she chased anymore. It was something that emerged naturally when she stopped resisting her limits. Kim didn't reject society entirely. She paid taxes when required. She followed laws. She interacted with the modern world, but she refused to let it dictate her identity. She wasn't a consumer first. She was a human first. And that distinction changed everything. Over time, Kim noticed something profound. The less she consumed, the more present she became. The more present she became, the less she needed. This feedback loop reshaped her understanding of wealth. Wealth wasn't stored in accounts or assets. It lived in resilience, in skills, in relationships, in trust. She could weather uncertainty because her life was flexible. When prices rose, her expenses barely changed. When systems failed, her daily routines continued. She wasn't insulated from reality. She was integrated into it. Kim often reflected on how fear drives consumption. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being left behind. Fear of standing out. By stepping away from those pressures, she found something rare. Contentment. Not excitement, not constant joy, but a steady sense of this is enough. In a society that profits from dissatisfaction, contentment is almost revolutionary. Kim didn't preach that everyone should live like her. She understood that circumstances differ, responsibilities differ, desires differ. What she offered wasn't a template. It was permission. Permission to question. Permission to downsize expectations. Permission to choose peace over status. Her story resonated because it reminded people of something they already knew, but had forgotten. That life doesn't need to be maximized to be meaningful. That happiness isn't found in accumulation, but in alignment. Kim Williams didn't escape reality. She simply chose to live it on her own terms, and in doing so, she showed thousands of people that freedom doesn't always look like more. Sometimes it looks like enough.